My name is Jacqueline Purcell. I'm the president of the Connecticut Land Title Association. I'm a member of the American Bar Association on the real property section, the Connecticut Bar Association on the property section. And I've been a title searcher for 25 years. So I've also do expert witness testimony in court on property disputes. So I would love to say that I'm an expert in this field. I'd like to correct Mr. Farino. There is no regulations. There is no, to be a title searcher in the state of Connecticut, I can just decide one day, I'm going to be a title searcher. And quite frankly, 25 years ago, that is what I did. I taught myself. I became a title searcher. There's no licensing. There's no regulations. There's nothing surrounding this profession. And it's also the only profession in the real estate industry where there is no regulations. Recently, on President Biden's State of the Union address, housing was a very large part of that. And we passed a bill, the Federal Housing Financial Agency passed a bill for a pilot program called Title Policy Wavering. And that what that means is that when someone refinances their house in certain circumstances, there does not have to be a title insurance policy issued on the lender's side. We do outsource most of our title searches to India currently. The reason why we cannot do that is they are doing searches online. We now have a third-party organizations, and we have 169 towns, right? And all of those towns are separate municipalities that do things very differently. There's only 3 states in the country that do it the way Connecticut does. So to have somebody overseas doing a title abstract or a title examination or search is the most reckless thing I have seen since 2008 in the mortgage industry. And back then I was a loan officer and a paralegal. And I foresaw the decline because of lack of regulations.
Is there a state in particular that's doing this right in terms of regulating, or could you tell us what the ideal regulation and oversight title searching would look like from your eyes doing this for 25 years?
Yeah. I think that right now, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Minnesota, West Virginia have it right. More and more states are following their model. Their logic model is amazing. And what it would look like for me, it's being done already, actually. You have to be licensed to be an investigative researcher in Connecticut. It's not done through consumer protection. It's done through special licensing and emergency, the Department of Firearms and Special Licensing. And the definition they use of a private investigative researcher is a title searcher. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to put financial resources. To me, it would look like taking an exam, a PSI exam like I just took for my real estate license. And in my real estate classes, I'm learning Title Search 101 from a licensed realtor because they need to know it. But you don't have to be licensed to actually perform the title search. So I think looking into the future, very near future, I think that a certification for an accreditation or licensing would be sufficient after taking an exam. To be a notary public in this state, I had to take an exam. In the real estate industry, when I purchased my home, I had to have a licensed realtor, attorney, home inspector, home appraiser. And quite frankly, we've had so many discussions on this. So many. We talk about stakeholders. Who are those stakeholders? I'm not a politician and I don't know a lot about that. But when we talked in our discussions about stakeholders, we talk title companies are speaking, who are the same very companies that are outsourcing. Attorneys speak. I think our stakeholders, we have a due diligence for our stakeholders to be homeowners, property owners, but there's such a lack of education. Property owners don't even know what a title searcher is because it's not disclosed in a closing. They don't even know that. I've talked to over 300 homeowners, and they say, wait, what is a title searcher? So the Connecticut Land Title Association, what our complete motto is: advocate, connect, and educate. We need to educate homeowners, property owners, and those are our stakeholders as experts in this field. And as an insurance commission, I don't think we need to look at the problems of the title insurance industry. We need to look at the problems of homeowners.
And can you share with us the problems that you're seeing with title searching that is, you think that is reckless, or maybe someone hasn't been trained appropriately, or as you were saying, the overseas issues? Can you just share those with us? Because I mean, I feel like I've been talking to you about it for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe other people up here have not, learned or heard.
I think one of the largest issues is building and zoning permits, open permits. When you're purchasing a home, we all want to know if there's a dispute going on, and I could attest, when I purchased my home, for an example, the gas line went through the neighbor's property. The person who title searched, who did our home, they always say, if you're a builder, you don't build your own home. I should have, but the person who title searched didn't pick up the permit that already existed that the gas company needed to pull up. There was an open permit to pull up the gas line and move it. 3 weeks after we moved in, the gas company came to tear up our front lawn because building and zoning records cannot be checked online. In 169 towns, they cannot. So they're not being checked online. Sewer and water liens in many of our towns are not recorded on the land records. They're kept separate in sewer and water lien books. Those are not being checked. Fraudulent deed transfers. I recently had, and I think I talked to Representative Wood about this. I recently had a fraudulent deed sent to our office to be recorded by an attorney. And normally we go record the deed for the attorney. They send it with checks. When we got to the Easton Town Hall, we opened up the envelope, and immediately as a title searcher, we recognized it was fraudulent. There was no 1-inch margin around, which is a requirement. You don't know that if you don't live in Connecticut and have been a title searcher. We need to leave an inch margin, or a paralegal or an attorney. Number two, the conveyance tax that was paid was with money orders that had Sharpie, that were filled out with a Sharpie, and $66 in cash. So I knew that it did not come from an attorney's office. The attorney's office, it came from, the phone number was disconnected. We did not do the title search at the company I own. I own a company called Fusion Title Search. The property was an over $1 million property. It was being sold from a company to a company for $212,000. Immediately, and it was signed by a notary public. And in Connecticut, we have to have a licensed attorney do a closing. We have to have a licensed realtor who is selling their home. So these instances have created liability that I think is going to be worse than what we saw in 2008 with the mortgage industry, where the mortgage industry was giving no income, no verification mortgages, but there was some sort of regulation around that. Right now, title insurance companies are issuing title policies based on title searches that are coming from online, unregulated, uneducated people in this industry in other countries and states. It is imperative that this be changed, in my opinion.
Thank you for that. Representative Meskers.
So I guess in the form of a question, we'll start with, so the problems you're seeing ultimately are resting more exclusively with the purchaser of the property versus the bank who may be financing the property, because I've not heard complaints from the financial industry yet. So I guess the cost is borne mostly by the person who's the buyer.
Yeah, well, I don't think so, because when the title searcher is doing a purchase, we go back 40 years and we're doing it for the homeowner. That is the reason we're doing it. However, they're being issued a lender's policy that they pay for, which only covers the mortgage company, not the homeowner. They can choose to pay for another policy, but we all hate. I love the insurance commission, but we all hate to pay for insurance. So they typically don't do it. On a refinance, we are doing the title search for the bank because the bank wants to know what liens are on that property for their interest. So I see it in both avenues. And now with the new national federal program that's just been passed, they are looking to do away with refinancing of title policies. Wow. If a title searcher, and I have $1 million E&O insurance, I'm responsible if there's an error. How can an out of state or out of the country title searcher be responsible to a homeowner in our state?
Well,
if they
more
make an error?
importantly, I think the question is, how do you make them? How can you assure that you'll get paid if there's a dispute and the title searcher's overseas?
That's true. You don't know.
You may
A
not be
lot
able
of
to
people
enforce.
require the $1 million E&O, but we don't even know where that E&O insurance is coming from. If and I have hired people from India to do a large research on this process. I hired them to do the research on my property. Every single one of them got it wrong. Every 12 title searchers from India who did my title search on my property had incorrect information on it. And I think one of those gentlemen we asked to be on our last meeting from India, he came on and talked about working for title companies and so forth.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions.
Representative Denning?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you brought up another question. When of the 12 that had an error, was it the same error?
No,
How many different errors did they find?
4
Okay,
or
So-
different discrepancies of title searches.
okay. So in Connecticut, there's a law that to close on a property, you need to have a lawyer. In the state that I spent most of my life in, Ohio, you didn't need to do that. So I was assuming that when you have a lawyer close your property, that he takes more culpability in making sure that that title search is done appropriately. Is that true, or do you know?
No, that's not true. Because I do searches for, I can't say that for all attorneys, because there are attorneys that do their own searches because there's no regulations. These searches that I do for attorneys, they trust our company because we are experienced, educated, we know the things. However, we type the commitment for those attorneys. So they are not even examining our title search because they know if there's a problem, the title searcher is getting sued. So there's a trickle down effect. The error comes in, they put a claim into a title insurance company. The title insurance company then, that is why there's 3% payout in title insurance companies. It's not because there's not errors. It's because the title insurance company then looks to the attorney and the title searcher to sue because their E&O is actually the one paying out, not the title insurance company.
And you're required to have what I would call malpractice or
E&O,
insurance?
not by the state of Connecticut. I'm not required to have anything. My clients require that.
So how can you talk about not being able to get money from people out of state? How do I know I can get money from people in state?
You don't even know that because these individuals in India have addresses in the United States, all of them.
No, I'm talking about, for example, people who live here in Connecticut. How do I know that those companies that live here in Connecticut would actually be able to pay?
Because we should, I shouldn't say should, but the better way to do things is to require $1 million E&O insurance. If I do a house that's over $1 million, I get an exception from my E&O insurance. But if we actually regulate it, that it could be a requirement of every licensed certified title searcher to carry now E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance. And the sad thing is that the community that we serve, and I love Connecticut, I think we do a wonderful job in regulations. We have so many regulations and rules in Connecticut, but I really think we're doing an injustice because we're not servicing. Our job is to service homeowners, especially in a housing crisis, and we're just not doing that. And a lot of it is about money. It really is because in India, they pay $10 for a title search. 25 years ago, I got paid 20% more than I do for a title search today. It's the only industry that has declined in income and has put, I'd say probably 300-400 title searchers out of work completely, quit.
Thank you
because-
very much for clarifying things I need
Thank
to learn more about. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Pavlik Tomato?
Thank you, and thank you. I heard the part of your testimony. But the title company, I was a little confused by this bill because the title companies, like you said, going to get sued if there's an issue with title. So it'd behoove them to, I guess, train whoever's actually doing the search or make sure it's done properly, right? So I'm not sure what the incentive is for them not to train people properly or make sure that the job is getting done properly if they issue a title policy and then they get sued.
Yes, but remember, they don't issue, they issue a title policy. All mortgage companies issue lenders title policies that only protect the mortgage company. The owner's title policy is separate.
Right.
That protects the owner. So you would think, but in the title insurance commission, in their minds, I believe that they're saying, well, there's only 3% payout. Because really, what is our issue when we're going to go to the title searcher? And if they are requiring E&O, then they have that policy, that E&O policy, they put the title searcher on risk. Even in India, the 12 men that I hired in India all had E&O insurance from the United States. They all had addresses in the United States. They all have bank accounts in the United States.
But they're working for the title company. So, they're an employee or 1099 or whatever. So it still goes back to the title company.
They're
So-
all 1099 contractors. So they do not, very few title companies employ, they used to.
Mhm.
Caddick, I love Caddick. They used to have their own employees that were title searchers.
Right.
But due to the economy, the decline in this industry and the lack of regulations, title searchers are no longer employed by attorneys, title companies. They're 1099 contractors that are recklessly given a 1099 at the
Right.
end of the year,
Well, no
never
matter,
going to the office.
but no matter what that arrangement is, that I don't know. Let's say hypothetically, that doesn't matter to me because I'm hiring the title company. So, and ultimately they're issuing the title policy. And I get what you said about, well, there's only a 3% payout. So for them, it's worth the risk, right? I guess that's their
Money.
reasoning. And actually a couple of people have, when I told them about the conversation or the meeting that happened, I think a few weeks ago, they assured me that the person wasn't from out of the country. But again, to me, I don't know if that necessarily makes a difference because ultimately the company is the one who's responsible. And title companies, at least the ones I've dealt with, they make us have E&O insurance as attorneys. So we have to have that. I was wondering, can you give examples of those errors you mentioned? You had mentioned can you tell me a little bit more about those errors?
The building and
Specifically, yeah.
zoning error, which was
The what?
the building and zoning error of the gas line, that permit is still open.
Okay. So
We
there was an
also,
open permit.
yes, we also have a permit open. You need to be a licensed pool installer. So we have a permit open because we haven't had our pool inspected
Yep.
yet. That was number 2. There was a Liz Pendens that was on record that was missed because 2 of the searchers I spoke to didn't understand that a Liz Pendens is telling the searchers something is going on in the judicial
Right.
courts. So as a title searcher, I then need to go and search the judicial
Court
court
records.
system, right? They didn't pick up that at all. 2 of them did not pick up the Liz Pendens because they don't know the rules and regulations of the state of Connecticut.
Well, I'm surprised they wouldn't at least put it down and say, caution, Erica, this is attached to the property. I'm not sure what it is, but it's definitely attached to this address because I would think that the title company would make sure that anything, attached to that address, even if you're not sure, at least list it and, put it in the report and make sure
Yeah, no,
someone's
that,
aware of it. So what was the other one? You said there was one more, I
oh,
think.
a liens pendants against the
Yep.
property and a mortgage that had been misspelled in my husband's name was not picked up by all title searchers.
So they missed it because of the incorrect
Misspelled.
spelling of your husband's name. Now that has happened to me. I have a client with a very difficult last name. And for that reason, I go down to the town hall itself to look, and it's always misspelled everywhere. But that's a good point too, is that clerks, I still have to go down physically, right? Look it up online and then go to the book, the physical book. And I was taught physically to do my searches, right, 40 years back, and match up pages back to back as far as the seller and buyer and transferor.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm going online still, if I have to use the online system of the town hall there, I could still miss it because it's still entered in improperly by the clerk. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to find the book and the volume if it's not in their system at the town clerk's office. So I'm not sure if that problem is solved.
It is, because as a title searcher, when I title search, if the name is difficult, I put in the first 3 letters of the last name.
And just do that.
And I search, I look at every single document. And when you're talking a last name of Bay, for instance, that is a sovereign citizen, there are over 500 records that will be recorded on
Right.
the land records that need to be really looked at. And currently, that's the difference between a title searcher, title examiner, and title abstractor. So a title searcher just used to, when they did a title abstract 50 years ago, even 40 years ago, would get everything on the land records, released or not, would get everything. Then as technology moved forward and as modern governments moved forward, we then changed things to give the preponderance of evidence, I should say, the due process onto the title searcher, who now eliminates the released documents. The title examiner's job is to examine the laws and regulations of the duration of liens, for an example, 20 years for specific liens, 10 years, federal tax liens. Federal tax liens are the only lien in this country that follows people, not addresses. So there will never be a proper address or a legal description recorded on the land records with a federal lien. So a misspelling in the name would be dramatic problems there in a federal tax lien, which in today's world, that I see them almost in every property. And that's a large thing. If you're not a searcher if you're not even an attorney or a title searcher, or paralegal, or many people, they don't know that federal liens don't follow property. They follow people. And that's another law and regulation. There's a state, there's Ohio, for an example. You were from Ohio, right? Ohio, you have to do a title search under an attorney because it is considered practice of law. So where is that blurred line? Is it practice of law when you're deciphering legal documents? Possibly.
Well, I have to say, in this state, seems like everybody's practicing law. I mean, you can go to a department, you can, they're free to give out advice, and then when they're wrong, doesn't matter.
Oh,
Doesn't
yeah.
matter. So it's a common issue here, whether you go to the clerk, the court, a regular state department. It is, look at the forms. You go look online at the courthouse. The number of forms, I just never, they don't provide that in Florida. And it's not because they don't want people to be able to access the courts, but it creates a lot of issues. You then naturally have a clerk who basically has to give legal advice.
Right,
because somebody's
exactly. And the
always asking,
docket.
and
The docket's online now. So
yeah, which is fine. I think that's fine. But there's so many self-help forms that don't even some of them don't even conform to law. But there's, you know, other ones that, again, it's just, it creates these issues. And they've just gotten out of control, and that's in, you know, again, across many fields, and, you know, I don't mean to go on a tangent, but.
Are you're like me, because even with technology, as we grow, we had a cyber attack, and we don't, let me be clear that 169 towns don't house their own land records.
Right.
We use third-party vendors. I love the term third-party vendor, everybody wants to hire a third-party vendor. So when that third-party vendor got cyber attacked, our land records were down for a month. I could title search because I don't need I
Right.
title searched during Hurricane Sandy because we don't need electricity. We don't need anything to title search. But people were in such awe over the fact they couldn't title search that closings weren't happening because of a cyber attack on our land records. Closings weren't happening. Foreclosures are a huge problem in this area, huge problem, because we have a foreclosure process in Connecticut that's very different from county-based New York or, so if you're a title searcher and there's a foreclosure, and especially if the house is owned by a company, I need to go to the state level. UCCs are done at the state level. They're done at a level that you just can't search online. I have 14 title searchers that do not search online. We search grantee, grantor books. We utilize the online land records as a convenience because it should be, makes our job easier. I love it. But to do a proper title search with zero regulation. And when that legal problem happened a couple of weeks ago with the recordation, I called the U.S. attorney. I wanted it out of my office. She said, well, just call the people that regulate it. I said, there's nobody to call. I called the Connecticut Bar. I'm a member of the Connecticut Bar Real Property Section. Well, what are we going to do with it? Is there title insurance? Well, I don't know. It's just a deed.
Right.
The attorney was in prison. The attorney who was on the deed was in prison for a $3 million fraud from 2 years ago. He still is incarcerated in prison. So it was astounding to me that I had nobody to go to. I called the local Branford Police Department where I live. They told me it was a civil matter. I said, I don't care what you do with this. Come get it out of my office. I want a police report on it. I'd be happy to share it with you all. They did take it. I have no idea if they even brought it to the U.S. Attorney's Office. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I think we do all agree that we need to look at this reckless industry right now when a homeowner does not know who's conducting anything that has to do with a possible liability on their home. It's reckless.
Right.
Period. And a title searcher's name will never be on a settlement statement, ever.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Delnicky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm probably learning more about title searches than I ever wanted to know. But I also realize just how critical it can be if it's not done properly. And basically, you're looking for, like, check every box, everything is done here. People actually have to go and access documents to verify. And I think of, like, in the greater Hartford area, as an example, you could very well have a water or sewer lien based on the installation of a pipeline to your home by the Metropolitan District. And it may only show up in their books and on their property card versus if you were to go to the town hall and take a look at the documents there, it might not show. Is that a fair comment?
Most municipal liens, except the sewer and water, depending on the town, every town does it independently and differently. Often you won't see it if it's in a separate sewer and water lien book. That's something that would not see. And encumbrances, easements are often not recorded. They are recorded on the indexes, but you can't see them because they're so old. You can't see the document. It is crucial to see the document. If I purchase a house, I want to know if the electric company can put a light pole on my front lawn. And if you're not searching for those things, that's could happen in any point in time after purchasing a home. And without a owner's policy, you are left in the dark because your mortgage insurance, your homeowner's insurance, and a lender's policy will not cover something like that.
And this is more a rhetorical question, but feel free to answer it anyway. How can it be done offshore?
I'd like to say it can't be, but it is done because of online records, and all that is being searched is what's available online.
So basically, we're becoming so dependent on GIS and electronic data. And I know you made the comment pertaining to a cyber attack. But even with, for lack of a better term, first generation documents electronically stored, if you don't have the ability to access them properly, you can't do a proper search. Is that pretty
That is
accurate?
absolutely correct. I mean, our land records go back to the 1800s. I mean, I've done searches, for an example, for Yale. We're doing searches now for charging stations. Those charging stations are just land that we need to do searches on. Cell tower searches, commercial searches. Commercial searches cannot be done online because of the UCC, Universal Commercial Code, that is recorded at the state level. And a lot of people you will find today hold title and trusts on companies. And those companies need to be also searched through the Secretary of State's office of who owns those companies. And now those owners need to be double checked on the land records, because with a limited liability company, it is just that limited liability. You don't know what reality is going to cover and something like that.
Well, I thank you for the answers there, and you highlight the issue
Thank
very
you.
succinctly, and I appreciate your commentary.
Thank you so much. And especially Representative Wood for actually
Thank you,
bringing
Madam
this
Chair.
to light. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline.